Hey, welcome back to the Métropole Grid. My name is Andre. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today we have a new deck dive for you in the standard format. This is a deck I put together called Casa. That's a portmanteau from two of the cards in the deck. Firstly, our identity from the Katara cycle. This is HB Asa group. It gives us some click efficiency. We get a double install once per turn if we're putting things on the table. And while that can't just push us very quickly forward, we're playing with a Wayland upgrade from the Automata Initiative, one of my favorite cards from the set, Tucana. This Wayland upgrade says when an agenda is scored or stolen, we can search our deck for an ice, get it on the table, saving 3 credits. Now this means if we jam into the remote server and score out, we push ourselves so much further, so much faster. Getting ice on central servers, icing up the remote server so we can push the next turn. But the big thing here is that if the runner does run the remote server and steals our Tucana agenda, we can go get the nastiest ice from our deck at instant speed. And then using the Asa group trigger, we go and put a Ganked in that server as well. And now the runner is going to have to introduce themselves to that nastiest of ice. It's a really fun and wild combo that's been catching runners by surprise. And we have a mixture here of an HB kind of very efficient deck that wants to really jam forward, but still having some kind of surprising trap plays that, again, a lot of runners are not going to see coming. We have a bunch of gameplay coming up. We're going to start the first part of the video talking about the deck itself. Please, if you want to jump to the gameplay, there are timestamps below. Before we dive in, if you appreciate these sort of deck dives, you want to leave a like on the video. If you want to comment below or subscribe to the channel, it really helps the Métropole Grid grow. So let's highlight the basis of the strategy of the deck, and that's a couple key cards. Firstly, we talked about Tucana. I love this card, and we've mostly seen it to date in Wayland kind of tempo-based rush decks that want to make the game all about the remote server and score out quickly. Now, HB kind of falls into that camp too. We're very good at scoring out agendas quickly that give us some sort of forward tempo, so I wanted to try this in Asa group, and it works really, really well. We score out an early off-world office with a seamless launch. Not only do we get 7 credits, but we also, of course, get to get some ice on the table. Whether there's going to be a big expensive piece of ice in front of the remote server to be able to make sure we can score our next agenda in the next 2 turns, or whether we want to get something on central servers so that our remote push also defends our centrals, that's a really cool spot to be in. Now, we are playing Asa group, and it's very important to understand this identity. This is from the FFG card pool, and it says that the first time a turn we install a card, we can install another card in the same server, either in the server or in front of that server. Again, the second card just can't be an agenda. Now that gives us an immense amount of click compression. And if we want to make the game all about the remote server as soon as possible, click 1, we install something in the remote server and then ice in front of the remote server, and we can be very aggressive very quickly. Getting an early Rashida is a super, super common play. But a big thing to understand too is that anytime anything in Netrunner says the first time each turn, not only does that count your turn, which we will be firing this every turn as much as we can, it also fires on the runner's turn. So we have a lot of ways to install cards on the runner's turn. Things like draft are pretty common ways. If this fires, that second subroutine will allows us to install a card from archives or HQ, and then we can get another Asa group card alongside it. So that's first time on a turn, it's just on the runner's turn. But of course, this interaction gets the most wild when it comes to Tucana. If the runner gets into a remote server and steals an agenda, we can go get a piece of ice and we can put it on the server the runner is currently breaching. That will be probably the first time a turn we install a card, so we can go ahead and Asa group a card into the server that's being breached. And if we have a Ganked in HQ, it's suddenly going into the remote server, and now we can throw the runner into whatever ice we just installed with a Tucana. And so it's important to understand when the runner breaches a server, they have to access all cards that they're able to access. Each individual card is considered a candidate, and the runner can't just jack out. They have to access every single candidate. What's really important to understand is that anytime a card is introduced to the server, even in the middle of the breach, it just becomes a new candidate and is appended to the list of all the cards the runner needs to access. So we introduce a Ganked mid-breach, the runner's just going to have to access it. And if they're not prepared, and they shouldn't be prepared considering we can pull with Tucana the worst ice for their board state, the one that they're missing the breaker for, we can get some really big blowouts that the runner might not expect, while also still building a good board state to capitalize on for the following turns. Now, of course, Ganked on its own, pretty potent, but specifically in the HB card pool, there are some weird interactions to produce these kind of infinite combos. And that largely does with any ice that allows you to install something from archives. So the idea here is if we ever Ganked a runner into the drafter and they can't break the drafter, while that first subroutine is going to fire, and that's pretty good for us, that second subroutine, we can use it to install the Ganked that we just trashed to fire the Ganked back into the server that the runner's breaching. That means when they access the Ganked, we can trash that same Ganked again and go back into the drafter, and we can do that over and over again. Ultimately, what that does, it allows us to draw every card in archives and add that to HQ. That's pretty potent. Generally in the early game, most of archives is all the operations that we played out pretty quickly that give us money or forward tempo. And then we can get one last install there at the end. Now, where things get most dangerous is not so much Drafter, which is kind of a nice tempo swing in our favor, but it's a card like Oncel. Oncel, very similarly in the middle, has that you may install one card from HQ or archives, which means that if that subroutine is firing, if the runner doesn't have a click or a way to break this, and having a click is the easiest way to disassemble this combo, you just click through that middle subroutine. Not only do we force the runner through the Oncel over and over again, of course, this trash one installed runner card subroutine is going to fire an infinite amount of times. That means we get to wipe the runner's board state. It's obviously very powerful. It's the sort of thing that's a more powerful on into the mid game where the runner has a real board state to wipe. And of course, that last subroutine is really interesting as well because we can just, on our last fire of that loop, just put an agenda or a Rashida or something we care about in the remote server, and it's entirely safe. This is the worst case scenario where you gank someone to an Oncel, they can't break it, they don't have a click, and you can wipe their board. And that's an option that we have with this deck pretty consistently, considering we have Tucana and we have Ganked in hand. We can fire that off on most board states. And that's the basic idea of this deck. I'm going to spend some time to go through every single card inclusion to talk about why they're there and why we chose these cards. So let's dive in. Firstly, agenda suite. We're playing 9 agendas. That's one agenda every 5.5 cards. That's a pretty good agenda density. And we're mostly playing 2-pointer agendas that give us forward tempo when we score them out. Of course, we're playing HB, so we're going to be playing Luminal Transubstantiation. When we score this out, we basically get another turn. Why not? It's absolutely fantastic. We're playing 3 Off-World Office. It's a pretty core card in these HB tempo-positive decks. Score this out, gain 7 credits. Use those credits to get some ice with the Tucana. You can choose the order they fire. Phenomenal. Just score this out. It gives you good money. We're playing a card don't think I've ever played ever. This is Remote Enforcement. It is an FFG card that when you score it out, you can search your entire R&D for a piece of ice and you get to install it on a remote server. You have to pay install costs, but you do not pay res costs, which in this deck, we're playing some very, very expensive ice. We talked about that tier. If we score out a 4-2, we get a tier on a remote server for almost no credits. That's kind of phenomenal and allows us to push ourselves even further forward and sets up some pretty mean ganks. Very importantly, remote enforcement is only the remote, so you're going to be worried about central servers. But if we have a Tucana in that server too, we can score this out and get 2 ice on the table. And this is an install, so if you haven't used your ASA group triggered that turn, you can get something in the remote server that you remote enforce in front of with the free ice. It's pretty great. Now, if you do want to keep your card pool closer to just NSG stuff, you can definitely trade this remote enforcement out for a full playset of Architect deployment tests. It's a similar card. It doesn't as consistently get you that big old tier that you have somewhere in the deck, but look at the top 5, grab an ice, grab even an agenda or an asset, that all works as well. But you can put the ice that you get from this, or technically anything you get from this, anywhere on the table. It doesn't only have to be the remote. This is an option you can try for sure. Finally, we're playing 2 copies of Ikoa Project. This is a defensive 5-3 agenda. The runner needs a click and 2 credits to steal this. That's something most runners have to keep in mind when they're accessing, and that makes it hard to steal this while also dealing with some of the Bioroids that the runner is incentivized to click through, and it's hard to steal this while still keeping that click so you don't get Oncel ganked to oblivion. It's a good card, and very importantly, we always want to be counting to 7 when we talk about our scoring patterns, so it's much easier in this deck often to score 2 of the 2-pointers and then finish with an Ikoa Project. Scoring Ikoa Project as your first agenda, that's not great because it's the only agenda in the deck that when we score it out doesn't push us forward, but you almost always want to score out 1 Ikoa per game. Generally later on is better if you can. You don't want to score 4 2-pointers, it's a lot of work. Next are assets. There's nothing really surprising here. We're on 3 Rashida. There's one of the most common cards in the standard format. We're really good again at making the game about the remote server, so click 1 on turn 1, Rashida behind ice. That's a good spot to be. 3 cards and 3 credits is phenomenal. We love cards in hand because that means we have more options with ASA group, but this is just one of the best cards to be jamming in a remote server. That's just not an agenda. Spin Doctor. Again, it's phenomenal. It's a 3 of, it gives us recursion. It's really nice when we install this for free with ASA group, and it gives us some tempo card draw at the same time. What I love about HB right now is sometimes you won't actually remove the Spin Doctor from the game. You'll allow it to be trashed just because if any subroutine fires on in the later of the game, that allows us to reinstall a card. This is a pretty good option that helps us in some weird spots. So very, very good. Now the operations, we're only running 3 different operations, full playsets of each. Hedge Fund as a start is no real surprise. It's really nice to land one of these on turn 1 so that we can threaten to res some of the bigger ites on the remote server so the face check can be a bit worse for the runner. 4 credits for a click is definitely not bad at all. We're running 3 seamless launch. We are all about scoring out very quickly, and getting 2 advancements for 1 credit and 1 click means we can score out 4 2 agendas in a remote server without betraying their agendas. We don't have to do install advance. We can just say install, and the runner might not know what it is, if it's an upgrade, if it's an asset, and then of course we seamless launch it out. That's very, very powerful, but do keep in mind in the upcoming gameplay, you're going to see a lot of board states in which, while I still have a seamless launch in hand, I will do something like install advance, and then on the following turn, seamless advance to score, so that on that turn, after we score out the 4-2 agenda, we still have a click left, so we can install something, so we can get that ASA group once per turn. That ASA group ability is nice. You want to get it once per turn, and sometimes just scoring out agenda and just passing the turn, you leave a bit of value on the table. It's also really nice to use this to try and easily score out a 5-3 that you just put in a remote server, install advance, next turn, you'll score it out. Finally, 3 copies of Greasing the Palm. This is a card I haven't really played much of from the Automata Initiative. It largely gives you an install and 2 credits for a card. It's not bad. It's definitely not the most powerful card in the deck, but I really valued a card like this that allows us to be as aggressive and run as smoothly as possible. And I also really valued on the early turn to have an operation in archives, so that if the runner forced us to ever res a drafter, which is pretty kind of underwhelming if you don't have anything to recur with that first subroutine, it makes it relevant on more board states. It's maybe not the best reason to play Greasing the Palm. I was trying it out. I enjoy the smoothing, but I think you could swap this for any econ card that is on tempo that you feel good about in these sort of lists. Now, of course, we have a fair few upgrades, and we're really good at getting upgrades on the table because we get that double install every turn. We're playing 3 copies of Ganked. We talked again, Tucana Ganked combo. It's super, super surprising and super rude. But I'd say even above all that sort of stuff, Ganked is unfortunately in a really good spot in the meta right now. And that's because there's a heck of a lot of runner decks that are dealing with ice with means that are a bit more temporal. The idea is that if a runner botulises through an ice, once they get through it, they have no way to not have to deal with that re-encounter off the Ganked. Cards like Boomerang, cards like Banhar, these are limited use options. And so punishing the runner for using limited use options and throwing them back into that same ice is pretty favorable into the modern meta right now. It's also definitely worth noting that if the runner ever accesses Ganked during a breach step, and you gank them into an end the run subroutine, and the end the run subroutine fires, the whole breach closes because the run is suddenly over. So it's a bit tricky to have this line up, but it's worth noting that if the runner accesses the ganked before they access the agenda in the remote server, which is a bit hard to hide considering ASA Group does care about the order of installation, the runner can kind of glean something about that. It does work as a purely defensive upgrade. But it works pretty well. Again, a lot of people are not expecting ambushes in HB, so running through a drafter with a botulus and letting this fire is pretty good. We're playing 3 copies of Tranquility Home Grid. This card is just so good, and it's like so quietly, absurdly good. The res cost to trash cost ratio is already so much in your favor, and very quietly, this gives you 10 credits throughout a game, 12 credits in a game, and some card draw. Very important to know 2 things. Firstly, if you have this res in a remote server and you install something on top of it, you're always allowed to get the card draw first, and then after you see the card draw, then you can finish the ASA Group trigger. So you might want to see 1 card deeper before you decide what ice to put on that server or what else you want to put in that remote server. Secondly, this is very important if you've never played this card before. The turn that you install the Tranquility Home Grid, it eats its own trigger because it was the first card you installed. So it's not going to fire the turn you install it again. Just watch out. That's not very intuitive. So you get this installed and then next turn you res it. This card is so good. We want to be installing something in the root of a server every single turn. We have 2 Tucana. Again, we talked about this at length already. It's so good that we can score out, get what ice is best for the board state, best for that matchup, and push ourselves even more forward. Either hunker down on centrals or keep that remote server going so we can jam out the next agenda and Tucana once again. We then have 3 Vovo as our final upgrade. Another new card from the Automata Initiative. I'm really surprised to be playing 3 of this because it is unique, but I've actually been appreciating a heck of a lot. Vovo allows us to res our ice a fair bit cheaper, and we generally install it clicklessly using the ability we have in ASA Group. And again, for the deck, it's so very quickly about putting 2 ice on a remote server and a runner considering running it. And so it's not long for Vovo to be that sort of 3 credit econ card. And once that ice is resed, Vovo is probably safe, so you can slide it over to a central server and get even more value. Again, one of the problems that you run into often is runners being very aggressive and forcing you to res your ice. And at that point, when you don't have a lot of money, it's hard to threaten to score out that off-world office that puts you very far ahead. So I appreciated Vovo as a 3 of just to make sure we have one in most of our opening hands because he's one of the best things to put in the remote server. And remember, you can move him around. The threat vortex is just not relevant really in the deck, but he does enough as is. I think you can definitely go down to 2 and play something else in that slot, a different econ card, but I like Vovo. We're playing 3. Finally, we just have ice, and the ice in the deck is really divided into 2 camps. The sort of early tempo stuff that we get to protect our early Rashidas and our early agendas, and then the really big expensive stuff that we're trying to cheat out with remote enforcement or Tucana, the stuff that the runner's really going to struggle with. So on the barriers, our big slot is Brawn. 6 is a lot. Again, this is why we love Tucana, why we love Vovo remote enforcement, but the runner generally can't deal with this too well in the early game, and pushing more agendas behind this is absolutely fantastic. If they click through this, the Ikoas are safe. The sort of ganked combos are online, potentially with the on-cells. Very, very good. Now, on the cheaper end, we have Hagen. 4 credits is still a bit expensive, but the face check on this thing is quite relevant. Firstly, it will be higher strength in the early game. Hopefully by the mid game, when the strength of this lowers, when there's a lot of programs down, this thing will have other ice to support it. But firstly, that first subroutine trash one program that's not a decoder, factor, or killer is super relevant into the modern meta. Almost all the Anarchs have fermenters hanging out. The fact that the face check can destroy their economy they're relying on for the first couple turns is phenomenal. And the ability for us to trash AIs that generally don't have the type, things like Amakua, things like Audrey is really good, let alone a Botchless hanging around on central servers. It's a really nice face check and the sort of ice that we res early to get those first agendas out. Next up, we have some code gates. Our biggest code gate here is M.I.C. This is another card that, again, Vovo increasing the palm, make it a lot more affordable to res this thing early because the face check on this is disgusting. I'd argue in most board states, if the ASA group has something in the remote server turn 1, you want to smash into it. This is the only thing that punishes you for making that line. Now, this is the card that we can produce against certain runners that we think can't break code gates well in the early game. We get this out with Tucana. We get this out, of course, with remote enforcement. And at that point, it's a bit awkward because the face check won't be relevant anymore, but it's still very taxing. This and the run ability, unless the runner spends a click, that's also really nice. It further protects our Ikoas, it further protects our Bioroids, and of course, it makes some of those on-cell gank combos a bit more consistent. Otherwise, all our code gates are more tempo-based options. Gatekeeper is our final FFG only card. On its own, it ends the run. Its first subroutine allows us to fix agenda flood or find agendas, whatever we need for the board state. Those are both very, very valuable. But super importantly, the turn this thing is res, it is 6 strength. That is massive. That's really hard for a lot of runners to deal with if they don't have ways to cheat through or around ice. And so keeping your gatekeeper for the certain board state on the remote server for the certain run where it really matters is a pretty skill testing question. Because otherwise, once this does become 0 strength for the rest of the game, it's a fair bit less powerful. Now, our last code gate, again, very meta relevant, is a full playset of magnets. 3 strength, an end the run subroutine that when rezzed, we get a blank, a Trojan is super, super valuable. There's a lot of botchless going on right now in the modern format. There's a lot of people playing mulch type decks. So having the ability to say, hey, you can't botchless through this, you're going to have to find a real breaker is sometimes a real struggle for some of the Anarch decks that are out there right now. Also deals with Arissana. Real cool thing too is Tucana allows us to get the ice anywhere. So if we score on an agenda and we realize there's a botchless cooking its way through some of our bigger ice in the deck, we can choose to toolbox out a magnet and just blank the thing, which is fantastic because this fires whenever it is rezzed. Feels like in a really good spot. Love the magnets. We can rush behind it pretty consistently. Finally, all we have left is our sentries. We talked about all of these. On cell is taxing. It's annoying. We've got ganks in the list. It lines up really well. We have all the drafters and we're playing a lot of operations so we can make sure that both of the subroutines on this fire as consistently as possible. And drafters just in a really good spot right now. Most of the killers that runners are playing struggle very early against drafters. Carmen is pretty popular. Breaking drafter for 4 is really rough. And an early echelon is even worse in a lot of board states. So we're in a really good spot here with drafter. And it's super relevant again with more of our ganks and the fact that we want to install stuff with ASA group. And finally, the flashiest ice in the deck. We have one of the most expensive cards in the whole format. It's Tier. Tier subroutines are definitely difficult. The runner can click through them, that's for sure, as much as you'll get the clicks to maybe fast advance a 4-2 from hand. This thing, you generally can't afford to res it, but getting it down cheaper with a Tucana or for free with a remote enforcement is largely why we're playing it in the deck. Ganking someone into this is obviously pretty rude. As much as the end of the run will fire, you're not going to get any sort of infinite, but it's definitely a good option, and most runners will struggle to deal with the massive unique ice. And that's the list. It's a lot of fun. You get the mixture of that HB jam, you get that sort of like tempo positive toolbox of Tucana options, but you also have some sort of devious traps that runners generally don't have the time to respect because they realize the speed at which you're going to go and they need to match that. Just to take a second to talk about some of the cards that are notably missing from the deck, I think it's actually kind of interesting. Firstly, I think this is the first ever ASA group deck I've ever played that doesn't have fully operational in it. We're only building one remote server, and fully operational is just an absurd economy card as long as you're building multiple remote servers, which is largely what most other ASA group decks do. In this deck, it's probably still worth considering. Maybe you want to play this over things like the Greasing the Palm or the third Vovo. It's only going to give you about 3 credits or some card draw, and that's not bad, but it's up to you to decide where you want your power to be, in the mid game or in the early game, and we went a bit more for the early. We're also not running any real defensive upgrades. It's probably not that big of a cost to run 1 Mana Garm to have access to that defensive upgrade to protect your agendas. Largely, it's going to be on centrals, because as soon as you put too many upgrades in a remote server, which this deck does pretty quickly, runners often just give up on it because it seems really, really hard to contest, and that's not often the incorrect play. We also at one point had a copy of Ablative Barrier. This card's not bad in the early game as a cheap face check, and then when it's rezzed, it gives us the ability to return a card to the table. This has to be in a different server, and while this will fire that sort of ASA group text, we don't have any defensive upgrades. Maybe returning a Ganked or a Spin Doctor is good enough. But I found threat 3 to be a really awkward threshold, because as soon as someone is on threat 3, they're also on game point, and I feel like at that point, things are a bit dicey. We might want a more powerful piece of ice, so we ended up cutting this, but it definitely makes some sense in the deck. We also considered Restore to get back our Tucanas that are being trashed, or any of our other cards, Ganked, stuff like that. Seems like it could work out. We're also not playing Mavirus. I think Mavirus is so good right now in the modern meta. It works really well with ASA group as well. You could maybe cut 2 Ganked for 2 Mavirus and not feel too bad about it at all. And finally, it's worth mentioning Ravana 1.0. This is a really interesting Ganked target because you can kind of build your own infinite loop. And on the exact board state where you have a rezzed tier and you have a rezzed Oncel, and the runner can't click through both of these subroutines or break a 5 strength code gate at instant speed when they're not expecting it, and that's kind of a big ask in a lot of board states. It's a hard thing to do. You can actually flatline the runner. If you copy core damage from the tier and the reinstall from Oncel, you can build some absolute death traps. And I think you'd have to restructure the deck to feel really good about this, because we only have 2 Bioroids, but if you wanted to play a couple more Bioroids and start ganking people into Ravana, I think you have a very, very potentially lethal deck, as much as it allows the runner a couple more ways to cheat through your early ice, and it's up to you to figure out where that line should lie. Now, last thing, I just want to talk about the Ganked combo, because a lot of players don't love the interaction. And just so you understand, one of the easiest things you can do so you never find yourself in the worst case scenario is making sure you always have 1 click left. You want to run early in the turn if you can. As long as you have 1 click, you can always click through this subroutine on the Oncel, and that means the Oncel won't fire an infinite amount of times as long as there's a gank to reintroduce you into it. That is super, super important. Do keep that in mind. A lot of runners want to click through this subroutine, but if you don't click through this one, that one will actually fire even more often once you go through it an infinite amount of times. There's also some tech you can play in the deck pretty cheaply if you really want to. Flip Switch allows you to jack out at instant speed. That can be good during the encounter, and this does see play in some criminal decks because of other meta concerns. And then other cards like Pinhole Threading to trash the Tucana can be very relevant, as much as Pinhole into a Ganked is an absolute nightmare. And then cards like Light the Fire to deal with the upgrades on the remote server. And cards like Imp are also really well positioned, because if you trash the agenda, we don't get Tucana to fire because the agenda wasn't scored. That's another good way to attack. And there's a fair few Anarch decks out there running a lot of Imps, so not the worst spot to be in. And that's the deck. I've had so much fun with this deck. It's just like a nice mixture between HB jam and scoring out agendas, which I love to play. You have to do a lot of planning about your turn, because you want to get that double install every single turn as much as possible. So you spend a lot of time figuring out, okay, what do I do next turn is going to impact what I do the following turn, so you can get that ASA trigger. I had an absolute blast playing this deck throughout an entire afternoon. We had a phenomenal win rate. The only thing that was a bit of a struggle was the criminal matchup, and that's worth being noted. We want to make the game as quickly as possible about the remote server, and with cards like Diversion of Funds, cards like Sable's Mark, they slow you down and force you to deal with centrals first, and that's not the easiest matchup, as much as some of those ganked combos can be absolutely disastrous if you destroy some criminal boards. But hopefully you enjoy this. Hopefully you enjoy some click compression, some traps, and some tempo positive agenda scoring. Feels fantastic. Again, if you enjoy this sort of series, leaving a like on the video, comment, subscribing to the channel helps the channel grow. And with that, enjoy the games. All right, we're back on JNet. We're playing some Casa. It's our Tucana. It has a bit of ganked ASA group deck. We're playing against Jat. Jat has a really good deck right up. That's right now just up on RNDB. We're assuming this is going to be Sable Carnage. It might be the sort of like Dogs version as well. This early hand's pretty bad. We'd love to have something in the remote server on turn 1 that attracts a bit of attention. We're not that good at icing up all centrals that soon. This hand's arguably worse. We'll see how this goes. All right, so we might be able to lock a Rashida in their remote server. The problem is the early drafter is pretty bad. I don't know where they're going to see like a diversion or something like that, but this hand's pretty bad. I think once we'd probably draw for a better piece of end run ice. We'd like to get like a magnet or anything. It like all gets border controlled at the end of the day, and we'll probably put the drafter on HQ and then just like hedge fund. So we'll draw once for ice. That's no good. So we can do new remote server drafter on HQ. Just put the Rashida out there. We just don't want to get diversion. Like Sable's gonna be running centrals. At least getting the drafter up there and then at least playing a hedge fund is probably the best case. And then next turn we'll hopefully to get our Asa. That's not a great start. Just gonna meet that tab. HQ is a mark though. Again, going through the drafter means if he does it too late on the turn, I don't think Nuka was in the Sable Carnage list, so this might be his own brew. But we'll see, like deep dive, you know, we're not amazing at dealing with it. Ideally, we like snowball forward as much as remote enforcements, of course, only the remote server. But if we can get a Tucana down, I think the best case scenario here is we want to get an end the run ice, and M.I.C would be probably the best. Get Rashida, Hermes early, can be pretty annoying. I think that's our play, is these two down. Let's see if it draws attention. We are flooding up a bit, that's for sure. We'll just click for credit. Next turn, if we get another ice, we can do 2 ice behind the Hagen. So we'll do ice, Hagen, whatever the Rashida gets us. But we get pinholed here, it's pretty bad. Hagens are actually kind of reasonable right now. There's a lot of turtle going on. Amakua has kind of come back, and this thing will just trash, you know, Botulus's, Amakua's. Heaven forbid, a dog R&D is the mark. 3 credits on free access. A bounce here is pretty bad, as much as we've seen. Almost half the agenda points in the deck in hand. Now, Criminal's not too great into ganked. Some of the ganked combos are pretty rude, as much as like, I don't know how consistent that part of this deck is. That is part of the deck that we'll see if it stays or not as we iterate through this. But resing the Hagen here, we're gonna pay 4. Here you can still just pinhole in. We're gonna have to protect this. So that is not gonna trash anything. We'll see if we just get an inside job here, boomerang run back, just an inside job. So we're gonna lose a Rashida. At least we have 1 inside job out. The run first there and then the inside job kind of forces us to res, which is good if you're trying to keep our money down. And second Nuka, so just good card draw. All right, I think we can draw once. All right, the ganked into the drafter doesn't matter too much because we're not likely to see a breaker. So we wanna do the double install here. Haven't drawn enough ice. Just click for credits, probably fine. Boomerang into diversion drops us down to 2. But ideally, again, we pop off next turn. Remote enforcement can push us forward. This is not a great start, though. The economy of the deck's pretty lacking, right? Like, we don't have Maryland. We don't play fully operational because we're a 1 remote server game. As much as, like, run R&D bounce, run HQ can be absolutely disastrous. At least the Ikwa is a bit robust into that. Very excited to see what the Breaker Suite is here. Again, Deep Dive is like the 5 influence tax. So far, we've only seen 4 influence, but if you play a singleton Deep Dive, it's a way to close the game. Otherwise, like we saw at Worlds, of course, a lot of like twinning. Baya bans on R&D, so nice here. We'd hate an agenda steal. We're gonna get the click back. Let's see what they can install here. That's generally what they go for. On 3 credits plus 1 for the Baya bans, like Miss Bones. No, we're not too weak into Miss Bones. It's only for installed cards. We would obviously love to keep our Tranquility home grid. And it's a ganked. They accessed it. Not trashing it. Mind you, Miss Bones is only installed cards, but now they have to be a bit frightened. Because we have that sort of combo, potentially, which is like on cell 1.0 or drafter into ganked, right? Like if they run through the drafter and we hit ganked, we get to basically draw our whole bin. That could be amazingly powerful. Inside job on the remote server. We're going to lose the entire farm. Man, just inside job. We just need a second piece of ice here. We're going to lose everything. Rashida for free, Tranquility for free. I don't know if we're going to have a game going forward here. At least with 2 inside jobs down, we might be able to do like, okay, so this is probably more twinning. We might be able to do ganked remote enforcement. Now, if we do score out with Seamless without advancing it, they bounce HQ, and that's probably bad for us. Not good here. I think we just push for it because, like, we're pretty far behind. I guess we draw once, right? Yeah, that's a bit better, I think. We'll have less cards on HQ, right? So if we do something like this, it gets us money up, which is good. In theory, we should have drawn once more. I'm not going to do that because if we score out, we're going to have to discard probably. But they're not really worried about ganked here. Carpe Diem R&D has been the mark. It's been pretty good. It's the best server for them to roll. Off-world office. Game's over, y'all. We do not have a game at all here. Mind you, think Criminal's pretty good into HB. So you want to bounce the first card if you're worried about an agenda. Because on Ace Group, the second install cannot be an agenda. So if you're worried about the agenda, you just bounce the first one. There's some incentives to do like a double install with ice and then do a 3rd install on top of it. So they can't tell the first or the second card is, but it's only for getting something on top of it. At least we didn't want to draw that, I guess. It was brutal. Pretty bad. 2 Rashidas down. We have no defensive upgrades. We have offensive upgrades, if you want to call ganked that. And they know this is probably a ganked. There is a Chesva, technically has teeth to the Hagen. So now if they inside job the Hagen, we throw them back into it. Ideally, not amazing. We'll see if they go far with here. Again, once they get a 20 down and they can threaten like 2 cards on R&D every single turn. Mutual favor, let's see what it is. Akura Purist, so they can break the Hagen. It's a bit expensive. Tucana, I think that's exactly what you want. Do you want to trash their whole board? We have a potential of a comeback here. It's a pretty wild comeback, but we have a potential of a comeback. We'll draw once, we'll double install this. So if they steal the remote enforcement, we Tucana for a mean piece of ice, and then we gank them into that ice. There's already ganked in here, so we could do double ganked. Yeah, this could be a huge blowout if we don't get blown out. I think we draw once. Yeah, we'll double install. And then with the Tucana ice, we can install the ganked. We'll just click for credit because their economy is not amazing. But in theory here, we can like gank them into, depending on how many clicks they have left, like we can do an on-sell loop, trash their whole board. We can do a tier if we really want to, which we res for like functionally 5 credits. But as much as like the Hermes is going to be a problem on central servers, if we score out this remote enforcement, we get like double ganked potentially into to Hermes, and we can also ice up HQ. So we do Tucana, get an ice on HQ, go from there. So we might get 2 ice on this table, or Giat might get like ridiculously ganked looped here, depending on how much they respect ganked, which is a pretty tricky thing to deal with. This is a really cool combo. This is why like the initial part of the deck like was interesting. All right, we're gonna get an agenda, throwing a second Hermes. So we have some stuff to do. Oh, we drew our tier. That's the worst possible time to draw that because we can't pull it from the deck. So we might go for a Brawn. But anyways, that's it's pretty rough, let's be honest. Damn, 1 in 33. So we'll do advance, seamless. And now we got a couple triggers. So first, we'll do remote enforcement. We can get any ice to put on server 1. That'll let us fire PD, so we can get the spin doctor into the remote server. It's pretty good. So we want to get the most annoying thing. M.I.C seems pretty difficult for them to deal with. That's kind of interesting. I think we'll do M.I.C. Server 1, that allows us to install this. Then we can put a Tucana, we can put an ice on HQ, which is what they're going to bounce. R&D is open, but again, we've seen a fair bit of points. So we just want to get something that will be annoying enough. Magnet is okay. We already have a drafter. I think we're just going to do Magnet for 1 credit. Put that on HQ. Now they can bounce. We don't have a window to res the spin doctor or the ganked. They can bounce the second ice on HQ. That's what we're more worried about. And we'll go from there. But this is potentially worrisome. They do know the spin doctor is inherently a spin doctor, or like, excuse me, they know it's not an agenda, because again, the second install with Asa Group is not an agenda. But now if they get to the server again, we have Tucana into ganked, so we can just produce like an on-sell, which as long as we have 3 credits, we can trash all the ice on the board. We would love to get a tier out on the remote server. Like tier into ganked is pretty wild, but the game is largely going to be about like protecting central servers. So here they have to play an event. I think getting down to 20 here would be sick. They have Unity. This is now largely free. We have no way to duck this, which is kind of unfortunate. Archives is the mark though. But we're going to lose our credits here. Yeah, we have no way to make money. We have no way to duck this. We have 2 zero costers on the table. But still, like just putting the agenda in their remote server is kind of what we want to be doing here. And we can spin doctor in. There's no economy who can really play on 2 low credits. Like if we even draw a greasing the palm, I think it's kind of out of our reach. We have to be worried about the 2 more diversions here. At least they got the Mystic as well. That was a pretty reasonable turn. Archives is the market though, not very useful for them. All right, do we want to spin doctor off the top? I don't think we have an incentive to. That's frustrating. Problem 2 is now if we want to get this in the remote server, which is the place we definitely want to get it into, we just need to put it in there. So we're going to probably just use the spin doctor here. Yeah. Yeah, we're just going to use the spin doctor. So here we can just install something in there. We'll shuffle back 2. So our turn is like install, credit. That's mostly it because they can't, the remote server is safer than anything else. We'll go for a seamless, and I think we'll go for a greasing the palm. So put this in there. No matter what happens to that, I think we're pretty happy. We'll put ice on R&D is like likely just going to get bounced, but we can threaten the drafter. Now HQ, like the pressure is not that good. We could actually use the spin doctor to throw at the Ikwa that turn. That might have been okay. But this tier is largely useless in our deck. We could also consider spinning doctoring the tier back so that if we do score a remote enforcement, we get a tier on remote server, but our remote server is looking pretty good. Here, yeah, they slam R&D, no doubt. With 1 credit, there's no ice we're threatening to res. Like, I don't think you expect a Tithe in an Asa Group deck, as much as the card is kind of reasonable. It's a bit worse with Chesva. And we can't score this out, so they don't really have to do anything. Pinhole threading. We're going to lose our Tucana. That sucks. Running R&D, like, obviously Archives is open, but they're going to get the click back here, and they're going to trash the Tucana for free with Chesva. We're getting pulled apart. This is really not good. So the accessing a remote enforcement, I was surprised. I thought he'd go for the Tucana. I think there's a play here that you're playing around maybe the Rashida. There's only 1 more there. But if you trash the Tucana, you can actually run the server. I'm surprised that Jot went for that. I think dealing with the Tucana is the way that we make this trade favorable for us. We can only pull out a drafter here, but if we drafter, we get to draw all this hand. It's not amazing. And we don't really want to do the ablative out there because he can farm the ablative and then deal with like a Brawn, which is the next dice we pull out. So here we're a bit short, right? We can only res a 4-cost dice off the Tucana, as much as we can ganked into it a couple times. So yeah, you consider running here, but it is largely not that possible. Yeah. Ooh, nice. 5 bands. Last click here. Can't res, can't do anything. Draw 2, likely. Get something down here. Again, you can use the Chesva credits, which is a sick interaction. So we'll see if we get a class act here would be pretty nice. Earthrise would be fine. Just some card draw. Again, they have just about everything. The twinning is a big piece of multi-acts they don't have, or if they want to start farming Awake. But it's kind of hard sometimes if you draw a breaker here to Wake and lose it. 1 and 7 is not too bad. You're going to be discarding cards anyways. What do you got? All the breakers. Okay, cool. So it's going to come down to money. So now it's really tricky for us to just click for 3 because we have an issue when it comes to it's diversion. And they only have 18 cards left. So we have to think how to get out of there. We can do credit, greasing the palm onto HQ, get 2 ice there. Right now they're breaking magnets for 2 a pop. The first one's free with Chesva. That at least allows us to duck the diversion. We can consider advancing ones here. I think we need to just like get to some amount of credit thresholds that makes a bit of sense. So put this on HQ. We won't go again. So on 4 credits, if we top deck a Seamless, we can score at the remote enforcement. Not really great. They also know that they can bounce this. But the remote server is like really difficult for them to deal with. It's just R&D is pretty soft. Archives is the mark here. Okay. Carpe Diem, I guess. Why not? 4 credits, the run itself doesn't exactly matter. I wonder if you hold that. I don't know if you want to do that this click, especially if you draw next, because you got a Dream Net and then like got the Mystic counter on it. I don't think you're going to struggle to get Mystic. Oh no, you are going to struggle to get Dream Net because it's the first time. So even if you run Centrals and use Chesva, you can't get it. So yeah, I don't know if you need to do that here, unless they need the money for a run here, which they might. Like maybe diversion right now, it makes sense. And you just want to have a bit more credits as much as like, yeah, I think it might be fair. But here we need to survive a turn to do credit hedge fund advance. That's the way we get out of this hole. Carmen to break on sell. They need to break 1 subroutine. Nice. And they have a click left, which is interesting. So here we have to do some math. So this is 3 strength. We also have to remember to res the Ganked because they can bounce it. So we need to do the math here. Okay, so they have 2 credits. So that means we can do an drafter loop and draw our whole bin. We can also like pop the M.I.C. If they do, they can end the run. And if we do that, we get an on-sell loop and we wipe their whole board. So if we pop the M.I.C. and they don't jack out, so if we pop the M.I.C. and he doesn't jack out, he'll have no clicks left. He can't, and then we just do an on-sell loop and we get him. So I'm going to threaten to pop the M.I.C. In theory here he jacks out, which like if he jacks out, it's pretty bad for us. But if he doesn't jack out and respects the combo, we should have him here. So let's see what he does. He should jack out here in theory. He doesn't. All right. Let's see some fireworks. The order of access here is actually kind of important. He stole the agenda first. Now this potentially is a disaster. In theory with 2 ganked, we actually didn't need to use the M.I.C. I realize. So remote enforcement fires so he can bounce a card. And then we're going to go ahead and we can go get, in theory we can trash the Hagen here, but we can get an on-sell 1.0 and we'll put it on server 1. This allows us to fire, oh sorry, how much money do we have? I'm not sure why it's not rezzed. We'll see if that happens. We'll do that. Okay, it's rezzed. Okay, all good. All right, and now this is here. So he's going to get ganked into the on-sell repeatedly. And we're going to trash every single part of his board state. And that's how you can blow someone out here. Now, we still don't necessarily win, but he's going to lose every single breaker and entirety of the board state. In theory, we could have kept the M.I.C. It doesn't really matter, but now he has to access this ganked, which is going to fire this on-sell repeatedly. And then fire this ganked, which like doesn't really do anything. Trash ganked. So this is an infinite loop. So then on sell 1.0 fires because he doesn't have any click lefts. As long as he had 1 click, he can break the you may install card from HQ archive subroutine. So we're just going to loop this a couple times. So we're going to fire on broken subroutines. So we'll trash whatever. Well, don't actually need to install another ganked here, which is pretty funny. So we can install a Rashida just on the table, if I'm not mistaken. What is the subroutine? You may install 1 card from HQ archives. I think it's GG. Not necessarily. Maybe, but maybe not. All right. Then we can just repeat it. So then he has to access this ganked. Now this ganked will fire again. He's like, yeah, maybe I don't. So he's going to go ahead and trash this whole board. We're just going to reinstall this gank over and over again, and we're going to leave it here, or we can trash this gank to go get something else on the table, which I think I will. I will trash this gank to go get a tranquility on the table, because I think we have a window here that we need to capitalize on. It's a trank grid. And he can't trash it, because not only does he not have money, but the on-sell says he can't trash it. Okay, and now we have to recover. Now, the question is, he still has probably boomerangs, I think. So, like, we can still lose from this board state. Like, we still have some work to do. We don't have real defensive upgrades. So we're going to res the Rashida, and we have to get back into this game. We don't have a virus as well, but things can get pretty tricky. So here, we need to kind of score. We need to figure out how to score out. Scoring this out is not very good. We're weak to diversion. We have a drafter in R&D, which also does an infinite loop with Ganked, which is not the most important, but you can get one good access here. But this remote server seems relatively safe. As much as you can do boomerang, click through the on-sell, that could be a problem for us. So we're going to try and, I think, protect the Ikwa at least. If he clicks through most of the on-sell, it's good for us. Shit. Resing the trank means that we can't actually greasing the palms from here. I thought we would. We're not clicking for a credit. There's no way that's right. We're clicking for a credit to gain a credit off this. It's kind of a wash. Yeah, we might as well not do that. So we're just going to go ahead and put this on the table. Server 1. We'll get some ice up there. An ablative barrier means we have access to some sort of loops. Oh my god, we played this terribly. Oh my god, wait, how scuffed was that turn? That at least plays on an inside job, but now we can just do credit. Right, like, in theory, we should have hedged on this turn. So I think we probably should have refused the ablative. Yeah, I'm gonna... No Asa. So that we can do hedge fund. Hedge fund? How safe is the server? He has to get in and steal the Ikwa. We have to advance the Ikwa. But I think here we'd rather just install now as a click here. So he has no access to breakers. We need to make sure that he can't get Amakua counters. That's the one way we lose. So it's a 3 strength that he can go through, and then we can ice up archives. The remote server, I think, is the one that I'm more scared about. If he gets an Amakua down, we ice up archives and then purge in a turn. I don't know if he wins in 2 turns. The ablative again, what does it do? Not too much. I'd rather have this here, I think. All right, we can't score this out next turn, but in theory, we can like get the ganked on top of it. But yeah, that's a pretty gross combo. It works with Tucana in Asa somewhat consistently. As much as we wanted to score out a bit more on tempo. Yeah, I think if Jot jacked out there, he would have been fine because we can't score out. But this deck probably has no recursion and has 1 Amakua. I'm just worried about boomerangs. I don't think we've seen any so far. 30 laundry for credits. So no Amakua just yet. So the Ikwa, again, is going to take us a bit. We saw 2 Hermes now. 1 trashed, 1 hit the bin. So it's also unlikely that we'll see a 3rd Hermes. Generally, the deck's running 2. Bravado. This is a drafter last click. So this actually causes another infinite loop. So we're going to infinite loop again. We're going to res the drafter. So we should probably consider resing the trank grid here. But this does an infinite loop. So the fire the subroutines. So we're going to add something to hand. I think we're going to go ahead and add greasing the palm. Then we may install a card from Archives of HQ. So we add the Ganked here onto R&D. Theory, I should consider this a bit more because he can jack out. He probably should jack out. But now there's a Ganked there. Then we can install another card if we really want to. I don't think we want to. So you have to jack out here or the Ganked will loop infinitely. We draw all of archives. You still get an accessed. You sure? Because this does an infinite loop as well. We just add everything to our hand. Yeah, you might not want to. Because then, yeah, we add 9 cards to hand. Yeah. All right. So we still have the Ikwa in the bin. We have a grease in the palm. Ooh, there was a luminal off the top, though. Now, we ideally scored the luminal, not the Ikwa. So we're weak to like 1. In theory, there's only 2 Ikwas, right? So if Jack can't find the Ikwas, he has to score at 2 points here. But here we want to ice up archives. And we want to advance this at least once. So R&D is pretty good. HQ is pretty good. We want to double ice HQ to be really safe. It'd be like boomerang to diversion, which is like only a bit ugly. So I think we'll draw once. I think we'll greasing the palm to get an ice on archives. And then we'll advance once. That's a better ice on archives, I reckon. This one we'd rather have on essential, I imagine. It's not very good into Amakua once it's res. That's like the biggest thing. So put this on archives. Just to deal with. We're not going to go do a double install here, and then we'll advance this once. Now we don't have a Tucana. We also didn't fire the Tranquility. I feel like that turn that we res the luminal, sorry, the Tranquility and undid it. We probably should think about it a bit further. There's probably a better sequencing there. I'm really excited to see that in editing. What was the right line? But Jia now has to really go far with getting some sort of multi-access. So like probably there's a Paladin Puemo left in the list. I think this is different. I'm not sure. Did Sable Carnage have Nuka in it? But like figure out how to generate good multi-access here, which like you can with Boomerang and twinning. There's the Amakua. Okay, so now we have to res everything. And a Bladed Barrier, that's going to less res and install something. So in theory, we actually had to install, we had to res the Tranquility first on the window here. Sorry. Because in theory, we have to res this first so that we can install the Tucana and get credit. So we'll res the Bladed Barrier. That'll get Tucana in server 1 so that we can get the Tranquility. In theory, we can Asa here, but this just means that it's a free res. We can install another non-agenda card. We really don't need to put the Ganked in there. And then that should fire. So the deck has no expose. It has no actual way to get Amakua counters. As far as like what we're expecting, there's very few cards in the format that do expose anymore. Now that being said, this is the weakness. If you can get one like Boomerang access, you can farm archives and then run R&D potentially. But we do have a Tucana to deal with that. So here, if we do advance seamless, that means we're not going to score out the, what's it called? We're not going to get the Tucana. I'd argue this turn we can slow down a bit. We can do just like credit, hedge fund, gatekeeper on HQ. No Asa there. And so then we actually can afford to do the seamless into the, what's it called, Tucana play. Because this thing is super safe, right? It's behind an on-sell into Hagen and this unknown ice. And there's only one more breaker. So it's still possible. It just like has to be, you know, twinning multi-access. Waken Plant is kind of out of the question. And then like one good run on R&D. And it's all about that last Ikua. Nice, just getting credits. Just a 3 credit run. Sure gamble, back in the money. All right, so we're gonna do here, advance. We just wanna make sure we're not overextending here. So if we seamless, if we score the Tucana, we'll go down to 3 credits. That's enough for the gatekeeper, but we need to res something here. It's a bit cheaper. I don't know if we do the Tucana here. It might be a bit too expensive, funny enough. But we scored the Ikua, that's it. Otherwise, we can do a Tucana. It puts us to 3 credits, which means, yeah, if he steals the Luminal, we don't lose. So I think that's fine as much as we want that. So I think we will, like, you know, just make sure that R&D is safe. It makes R&D look more important. So here we can get something on R&D. It's going to cost 3 credits less. So just a drafter, double drafter is not good enough. I think we'd probably want a Hagen. That'll be a Hagen for, it costs 1 real credit, 1 real install. That puts us down to 1 credit. And I think it's the only thing that makes sense here. We'll put on R&D. We'll not use our ability. And next turn, if we install the Luminal, we'll gain 2 off of Trank, and we'll be able to close the game out. That's why we wanted double ice. So this is what he's going to do to farm Amakua, yeah? Having a second ice here, and it's probably like, maybe he's more likely to, I don't know if you can Boomerang the Drafter to Ganked. But yeah, this is where like we eventually have to purge. The question is how many tokens he can get in. Once he gets 1 token, he can go off of this, and then he can actually farm here. So we might have to take a turn to purge. This deck has no Virus because this combo is so heavy on influence. It's like 6 influence worth of 2 Tucanas. And 6 more on Ganked. Yeah, this is the hole. He's found the chink in the armor. And he's definitely exploiting it well. He's playing his outs. This is good. Because now he threatens an HQ run. The question is like, so he can get 4 tokens, 5 tokens to run the remote server. Can we blow him out again? No. So we know there's 1 Boomerang in the stack. So us purging doesn't do too much. So what we can do is we can install the Ganked on server 1. We can put Magnet on archives and then purge and set up for a 2-turn play. Because we purge now, he can just Boomerang and redo it. So we don't do too much. So I think getting the Ganked in the remote server forces him to run in a way that considers. So we're going to pause here for effect. So it makes him think we're thinking. So the problem is like he might run HQ. So we want to end with 3 credits. So we'll do this on server 1. We'll do Trank to get 2 credits for sure. We won't install something else. We'll put this on archives. The deck doesn't run a legwork usually, and then we'll click for a credit. Click for credit means that we can res the gatekeeper or the magnet, depending on where he goes. And we're also threatening to win in the remote server. And if you run the remote server, right, like we still have Ganked into on sell, which is going to be difficult. Archives is the mark. And now next turn we can consider purging. Because even with the Boomerang, he can't get any accesses anywhere. He might be locked down in a bit. This is neat. Things were looking bad until they weren't. Wake is coming down, okay? So we res a gatekeeper here, we go down to 0. That means if we purge, he can still do the Boomerang. Here we need to do the gatekeeper largely. This also lets us like fix our hand. So we can figure out where the Luminal is and put in the bin, potentially. Or not the Luminal, the last, what's it called? But this unfortunately isn't doing anything for the rest of the game. Fire and Broken Subroutines, we'll draw 3. There's no really economy. Vovo in their remote server is actually really good. Vovo is sick. We're going to shuffle back an off-world office. But now he can farm archives. And archives is the mark, right? So he should farm archives. But we need to keep him out of here. So next turn, if we purge, at least slows down the wake implant charges. But getting a Vovo into server 1, rezzing it and moving into archives, and then just clicking for cards, purging the following turn is probably a fine line. The issue is that he can run HQ a lot, and we probably have to purge actually right away. We just want some sort of click compression so we can install something. Because if we purge, he can still do the boomerang run archives, but at least it will buy a turn before he can do the HQ line. It's tricky. It's really tricky. Because next turn, obviously, the Gatekeeper is kind of ass. Like, this is 0 strength. So he runs this. Again, this is 1, 2, 3 credits, which he can afford. And that builds a wake implant, which he transitions into R&D or sweeps HQ. So to get out of this, we can purge. That being said, then he has to boomerang archives, run archives. If archives is not the mark, boomerang archives, run archives. Then he can run archives, run archives. He's at 3 again, and we kind of got nowhere. So we might need to take a turn off here and just hope that the wake implant doesn't transition, and then we'll purge in the following turn. This guy here is really good. We'll do Trank. We want Asa, game 2. And we can do credit. We are weak to diversion here. That is for sure. The winning agenda might still be in the remote server. It might look like it because we kind of went low in there. So like here, you could just do a diversion. We've seen a couple. The question is whether we res Vovo and move him over for archives. I don't think he has a huge incentive to run archives this turn. So we're going to wait. And then we'll move it over next turn after we purge. Because Vovo only helps resing this magnet here. And it's okay. It's also a nice way to like pseudo duck the diversion. But a diversion here would be really powerful. Dirty laundry on HQ. Ugh, hate it. If he steals this and then builds Wake Implant, like we can still lose from here. He's playing to his outs really well. We're just like slightly too slow to lock him out. We just need Maviruses. A single Mavirus would be good. I don't know if we need all the Ganked. They seem pretty powerful though. All right, so this builds the Wake. It gets a click back. Steals the Luminal. No bounce though, but he's on game point. So he knows like one good run in R&D wins it. So in terms of the points, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there's 9 more points. He might think there's one in the server 1. He might have to just send it this turn because he thinks he might have lost here. So he's probably going to build up all the weight counters and run R&D. That's probably the play here because the remote server looks like it has the win in it. If that's the case though, right? Like he still has to deal with the Hagen. So he can run one more, run that. Getting ganked into the Hagen is not that powerful, but like you can see 4 on R&D this turn. It's hard not to lose to that. Because any 2-pointer wins. See, like he doesn't need to save the click and 2 credits for the Equa, as much as like you could consider it, for sure. Does he want to contest the remote server? He needs to be on 5. Now he knows ganked doesn't really matter as long as he acts in the right order. This is cool. This is cool. And next turn we like definitely purge if we don't get diversioned here. So he might be considering his 2 cards in hand, whether the diversion comes down here, because then we can't purge, because then you can still do boomerangs into archives run. That being said, actually, like we're in a pretty bad spot too, because he can just boomerang the magnet and like run HQ. As much as he does it once and that maybe opens up archives, but yeah, no, that's okay. Because then he needs like multiple boomerangs to just get a counter. Ooh, he's going in. So he's saving the Iqua click here. Love it. So we're going to see 3 cards off the top and he's going to have the click and 2 credits. So we're going to boomerang through the Hagen. Drafter. 2 more credits. So the Ganked is going to fire. And no, if we fire the Ganked into the Hagen, he will lose his Amakua. So this potentially is the last run of the game. Hold. Looks like a trashable. Hold. Yo, good game. That was sick. Oh man, so hard to keep that turtle out. That was wild. I just couldn't purge out. Yeah, we just couldn't purge out there. That was wild. Well played, the Giat. But yeah, there was just no way that we can keep the turtle out. And even without breakers, just the turtle to wake implant was enough to do it. I wonder if the gatekeeper on HQ is wrong, right? Like we talked about how this was bad into Amakua. Admittedly, if we got a drafter there, right? Like, I don't know if you just fire it. I was thinking Mavirus S1 hence the boomerang backup. Nice. Yeah, we have no Mavirus on the list. We definitely want that. And he played around it. As much as the drafter would fire, we like don't have defensive upgrades to get him to R&D. So in the deck, there's still a fair few agendas. Like there's 4 agendas in the deck. So seeing like 3 cards there was not unlikely to do it. But Ganked here, yeah, actually ends up trashing the turtle. So that was like the last run. Get out of there. That was wild. Glad we got that on tape. All right, we'll try it again. We got close. We definitely got close there. I think there was maybe some scuffed sequencing. We'll check it out on the tape, but that was really fun. All right, playing some Casa. We got our Tucana. We got some Asa. We playing against Loup. It looks like there's a lot of Loup out there. People playing that sort of like maybe mulch trash based deck. This opening hand, we have a magnet for the remote server. It's kind of the best dice we can ask for early, but we don't have too much to put in there. If we open with a spin doctor, it eats our ability, but this hand's like not bad. There's a couple trashables, but getting the Tucana behind the magnet and just like holding might be okay. We'll keep this. Thanks, you too. Ideally, we're a bit of like a snowball deck with a Tucana. Drafter is good for R&D. So here we want to figure out what we want to do. If we start by getting Spin Doctor behind a magnet, we can do Spin Doctor behind a magnet, res the Spin Doctor, install an agenda we draw behind it, an Ice Age key. Let's just do that. So res is to draw 2. No agendas. It's nice to have the greasing the palm here because we can grease the palm on HQ to get the drafter up, and we can just hedge fund. R&D will be wide open, and currently all of our agendas are still in there. What is it, 9 of them? All 9 of them are still in there. I still think we'll do that. Getting the Vovo on the table is quite nice. We'll get this on HQ. I don't think we're going to be forced to res a lot. It's nice to get the greasing the palm in the bin so that the drafter fires it's relevant. I'll just get the Vovo up and good to go. If they run HQ here and trash something, I think the drafter is fine. We can always use the drafter to install the Tucana. So we'll see how their opening is. Buy bands off of R&D. You don't often go for the 4 credits here to trash because you don't know what you're going to hit. But there is a fair few trashables in ASA group. You're expecting to like the Marylands and that sort of horizontal play often, as much as we're playing one remote server. So draw 2, probably install here just to get set up. An early imp is really nice pressure from Loup. That's the sort of pressure you get on every central server. So they're going to get something down for 1 credit. Let's see what it is. Watchlist, nice. It's a drafter on HQ. There's a magnet on the remote server, so we need to force them the remote server sooner than later. And they trashed a Rashida. Good hit. Wake, though, losing a boomerang. So it looks like this is a slightly different list. We've seen a lot of criminal influence so far. All right, we got the off-world office behind a magnet early with the Tucana. Seems like a pretty good spot to be in. So we can just kind of dump our hand as much as the imp into the seamless launch will be pretty bad if that does connect. But this, if we use the spin doctor here, with the drafter is no longer relevant. Those are good cards though. It's sometimes nice to keep cards in the bin for that specific interaction. So we'll do server 1, card in server 1, hedge fund. We can advance once here. I think advancing is actually probably pretty fine. It is a magnet, so they'd have to like dump another boomerang or a buzzsaw to get through that. We will advance. That means we can seamless if we have it, and then whatever we top deck, potentially we can jam in their mode server as well. But the fact that we have an Tucana here means no matter what, we're relatively happy with how things go. But they're definitely going to run HQ. Raindrops as well. Where's the drafter? That should use the botchless counters, and the axis here is not particularly relevant as much as the Waken planet is kind of nice. So we have to make sure HQ is not easy to run, and once they res the magnet, it'll be fine for us. So here they can let it fire if they want to. It lets us get a hedge fund back, which is not amazing for them. But like we might not have an install from archives. We don't for sure. Maybe not from HQ. So they can decide to let some of these fire if they really want to. Like only break the first one probably break. The second one they could maybe consider letting fire. They did the opposite. Oh, I thought they would do the other way because they know we don't have a hedge fund, but maybe they didn't want us to get an install there. So they saw the hedge fund. Again, no surprise. They got a card draw. They can see 2 now off the top of the Waken plant. We haven't seen an imp yet. But this deck doesn't have a virus because we're spending all our influence here. So the big question always is with Tucana, whether we go get another ice for server 1. I think it's more likely we just get a magnet for R&D that solves 2 of our issues at once. So start of the deck, we don't have anything to really install here, so we're not going to be missing out. So I don't think we seamless. I think we just do triple advance, res the Tucana, get a magnet on R&D. Advance score, off-world for 7. We'll get a magnet on R&D that eats the botulus. We can install a non-card there. We don't have one. And so we're in an okay spot there. So the botulus was dealt with. We've seen a lot of influence on the criminal cards. So we've seen 5 influence so far. So they might not be too simulchip heavy. But now all the centrals are hard to run. And they need to get an actual breaker to deal with the magnet or a boomerang. And they've lost 1 boomerang so far to the Waken Plan damage. Did they play last click? The strike one they did play. So now the remote server, we have a Vovo if they want to charge. Just another magnet. Ideally, we get a drafter or something from there. Actually, not a drafter. Any ice would be a bit better. It is a magnet. Now they can run here to deal with a Tucana, but we're so super happy with the botchless being pre-installed. Boomerang on HQ, they know one of the cards there. I'm not too worried about that. Greasing the palm, we want to get another piece of ice here for server 1. Or even for HQ. We'll draw once more. All right. If we let HQ go through, we can do double drafter. It's not amazing, so we'll grease the palm drafter so the greasing the palm actually hits something. We don't have a trigger there, but we just want to keep rolling with agendas. And luckily we have 2 magnets out so far, but the ability with Tucana to pull the right, program, or sorry, the right ice for the board is super important. Second strike fund paladin, solidarity badge, so trash forward. Loup hasn't fired once so far. Get us an ice. Okay, that we can put in the remote server for sure. It might be safe against the magnet. That's a second boomerang. So we can do, let's draw once for a double install. Shit. So we want to install the remote enforcement in server 1. And I don't think we advance it. We'll just install it in server 1, no trigger. We can always draw once more and get a double install. I think we don't really need the money, right? This magnet's rezzed for 2 credits. We could draw once more. It's a bit risky. We have like 10 more ice on the deck. Yeah, let's just go for it. And we'll just hedge fund. That's fine. So here we'll seamless this out and we get installed 2 ice from our deck if they don't contest it. And to contest it, they need a way to deal with magnet, which is kind of difficult. We've seen 2 boomerangs so far. They don't have a ban hard down. They would need to like hard cast Buzzsaw. It's a hippo. Nice. Magnet. Got him. So it blanks the magnet. So we're going to fire that. They can come back, but they can't afford the, this is a really good snowball for us. They can't afford the Buzzsaw here. So we're going to score our remote enforcement. Unfortunately, getting the outermost is pretty rough here. We can consider rezzing the Vovo, but I don't think we will. We'll get an ice on R&D, another ice on server 1. So we'll do seamless. This is what we want to do. This scores out fast. So we'll score out the remote enforcement. Here we'll do the remote enforcement. We can get any ice on server 1. Now I think we want to just get a tier because it's big. They can click through it. It's totally fine for us. That goes on server 1. And now we can get non-agenda installed in there. We don't really care to get a double Vovo in there. We could actually, but I think we like the HQ padding. And then we can go get a Tucana card and put it on R&D. So we want to get something annoying. I think getting a Hagen for 1 credit is totally fine. We don't really have an incentive to get another magnet. So we'll put that on R&D. And next turn we can, hedge fund, install off-world office. Ideally we score out from here, but this is pretty fast, right? Getting this board state on the end of turn 6 is pretty good. But that's what happens with like remote enforcement and Tucana. So if they ever click through the tier, right? They can technically break it and they can hippo it. So if they do that and spend their whole turn clicking through this, they give us like a 6-click turn. I think we're happy with that because we just score out the off-world office. So while this being the outermost is pretty weak into hippo, it's still hard for them to deal with this. This is definitely a demoralizing board state in terms of going forward. Yeah, good game. Yeah, I get that for sure. They did not get their loot ability to fire. We got all our stuff iced up and they don't have breakers soon enough. And that's going to happen. And that's kind of what I like, this snowball of a deck and go really quickly, really forward. And we could play border controls instead of the Ganked, but the Ganked is, kind of twisted fun. So let's do another one. All right, Padma, really cool. Haven't seen Padma in a while. We have an opening hand. We got a nice ice for R&D. Magnet on the remote server is okay to see how Shaper deals with the code gate. Sometimes it's like never quite obvious if you're uniting through this. This hand is not bad. It's not really like super tempo positive unless we draw an agenda. We can definitely keep this. This is safe. And a drafter on R&D is kind of hard for what's it called? For Shapers to deal with early because Echelon doesn't deal with it. That's kind of all the killers you're expecting. We'll keep this for sure. Magnet's also really nice in case there is some sort of tricks. Hagen. All right. We just got ice for days. So our remote server, we probably want the Hagen on it. Face check into this can be interesting. We want to get the drafter on R&D after we play the hedge fund. So I think we can draw once more here. We don't have a double install. That really incentivizes us to do a double install in the remote server. So we're going to go for that with this, and we're just going to ice up R&D so it's not free tokens. There's an Ikua from hand. If they spend a click and 2 credits and another click to run to steal that, I think we're okay with it. As much as we're not rezzing the hedge fund or using the hedge fund here, that actually makes the drafter not very good. I would argue that we probably don't have to ice R&D because I don't know what the worst case is. Like install Nuka, run R&D, I guess. That's like the punish for not having ice there. Oh, environmental testing run R&D is also pretty good. But yeah, unfortunately, drafter is pretty rough. DZ early. Well, this might be Nick's deck. Nick played a deck like this recently at an event and just published it. So we get Tranquility, which is good. We just don't want to score out the Ikua. Yeah, draw once. We can draw again for a double install on top of the Trank. That's good. So we'll res this. Sorry. I think the math works out the same, but we'll res this. We'll get... Wait. So we have to commit to the draw because we saw it. I have to draw there. Yeah, we only have 1 click left. Excuse me. So we're going to do this. So they know that we have a hedge fund. We're not going to be able to play it. So that goes into server 1 and we'll just put this on front. So we'll do Tranquility game 2. Then we'll put this on server 1. That's totally fine. Rashida firing is really important. The drafter still doesn't have relevant text anymore as much as we could like use it to install, I guess, the Ikua on the remote server, but no, on top of the Rashida, not at all. This deck actually has Beatrice in it. If this is like Nick's deck that he posted, which I played against it at the event. This, I'm just like, you know, you don't see that much Padma, and it was posted just yesterday, I think. All right. We're going to get a Rashida. Pretty good. Draw 3, gain 3. Now we have relevant text on drafter. We did not draw an agenda that we want to score out. So we might just push for the Iqua, unfortunately. We could, actually, we probably are better off just like spin doctoring to find the right agenda. So here, we want to double install. We don't really want to pop a spin doctor. We can do spin doctor in another remote server. We don't really need the double install. The double install is okay because we have Tucana into Rashida. That's fine enough. But as soon as we commit to the Rashida, we're not spin doctoring. So I think we just clear the 2 5/3s from our hand. Sometimes it's nice to hold one. We could actually draw there, which would probably be better because if we draw an agenda, it goes on top of it. I think we do draw there. Yeah. I am an absolute oaf. Sorry. Yeah, we definitely want to be drawing. Oh, but then we can't double install it. No, we'll just commit to it. I forgot we can't double install. Okay, so that's fine. We'll get Spin Doctor in a remote server and we'll just play. I don't actually think we can play a hedge fund here. I think we just click for a credit and so that we can discard one of these 5/3s. Now they have to run archives or run the Spin Doctor for it to be relevant. We can also, again, like just drafter that into the remote server if we really need to. Second environmental testing. So they have a lot of work to do to get any amount of credits. Again, is this better than daily casts? Depends how quickly you do it. I don't think Padma is particularly quick at it. So here we want to get a tempo positive agenda. Draw 3, gain 3. Nothing? Nothing. Okay, we're going to score out this Iqua from hand. We have a seamless as well, so it's a bit easier for us to do it. So we have the seamless ganked combo. We'll keep the ganked in hand because we can do some sort of infinite loop if we need to. So we'll go ahead and we'll greasing the palm this onto server 1. Oh, we already had a seamless in hand. So we'll trank for some money, I guess. We can install another card here. The ganked, in theory, the order matters that they access the cards in server 1. If we have the ganked, we can always install it from hand, which allows us with the Tucana to fire the tranquility. I'm going to value keeping that in hand because it gets us a trank on the next turn if we score this out. So we'll spend 1 seamless on this. We'll advance once. So next turn we can double seamless if we really want to and spin doctor those back. We have another card that we want to jam in. So here we have a good line, right? Either we score this out, fire Tucana, get an ice on R&D or server 1. Again, I do think this deck is on Beatrice, probably. Yeah, this is the Beatrice deck. So this is probably Nick's deck. So M.I.C comes down really expensive. They need to make successful runs in R&D. They've shown no breakers so far, but Beatrice is the HQ run. So they're one more install away to get 9 credits, which again, daily cast plus more steps. So now they're running with 2 credits. Oh, they charge environmental testing. Okay, that's why it works. That's super sick. So let's see how they break an early drafter. That can be pretty difficult sometimes. There is 3 points out of the deck, so we don't mind too much. Revolver, nice. That's pretty cool. Breaks for 2 credits, 2 bullets. We don't really have to do much here. They can charge a revolver as well. It's pretty neat. So Mind's Eye, again, they can lock the top of R&D. Very cool, mind you. Interesting console. It's a bit slow. So here we're going to get a nice, good ice on R&D. And we're going to, I think we'll put the ganked on R&D as well. On sell into revolver is pretty bad. So I think, yeah, we might just do an M.I.C, see how they deal with it. I think this deck is actually on, what's it called? Hyperbaric. All right, so they know we have a greasing the palm. We don't have a huge incentive to double seamless this, so we'll single seamless. So advance. We'll res this, we'll score just a 5/3. So now we can get any card onto the table for 3 credits less. So if we get a Hagen, that'll be 5 strength. They have to deal with that. Gatekeeper is not a great thing. Bronze is actually pretty good. I think bronze is going to be relatively taxing. I think Kurapir is the fractor in the deck, and that doesn't deal with this relatively well. We could, in theory, ganked here, but getting an ace install, I don't think we have a huge incentive to do that. From here, we love a remote enforcement to get a second ice here. A Vovo in the remote server is also pretty good because we have to res all this stuff. Daig, love it. A bit too late, but again, charging the Mind's Eye is fun. Cassie string, super cool. More things to charge. I don't know if this is Nick's list or not. So this is a spin doctor. So the Cassie string says, when a runner remote server ends, you may place 1 power card if you stole. If you access cards and still no agendas. So we'll res the spin. So we have 1 run. Oh, they can't run here. So we'll remove this from the game so they don't get Cassie string counters. So we'll put the Iqua back as much as we don't really want it. We'll keep a Rashida in there for sure. I think the seamless probably back into the bin makes sense. We have 1 in hand. And then we're going to just jam out the off-world office. With the ganked, we have some combos as much as revolver deals with a lot of them. How much does it cost a revolver into a tier? That's a lot of ganked. All right, we'll set up a ganked server 1. Tranquility for 2. Another card in there. We will advance it once. We can still use the seamless for value. Here, I think there's an incentive to put the ganked onto the draft, onto R&D. We're still going to need 3, 4, a bit of money 7. We're not going to expect to lose that much money. Getting a ganked on R&D is like kind of okay. It scares them a bit. And this says whenever you make a successful run, acts as the top card of R&D, so it doesn't deal with upgrades, unfortunately. I think we can put this on R&D. That might slow them out. As much as like ganked into drafter just eats them bullets, I think we'll take that, right? Telework, another charge. Oh no, it doesn't have power counters. I'm so used to like shortcutting that by putting 3 counters on it instead of putting 9 credits. And here we will seamless if we have something to jam in the remote server this turn. Otherwise, we'll just score this out. Nuka, that's a charge target. So we're gonna get another Tucana here. I think Spin Doctor is actually worth expending the seamless on. So seamless, advance, score. We'll do the off-world first. We can get a piece of ice. So I think M.I.C in the remote server is probably the most annoying. Server 1, that allows us, oh, we didn't have to seamless. I totally forgot because we have our ability here. So they know that this is not an agenda because it was used with our ability. So when M.I.C comes down, they can charge something. We have some incentive to ice up HQ. They charge a revolver. But yeah, we definitely shouldn't have spent the seamless there. So Spin Doctor, if we draw, we can jam an agenda. If it's only a 3-2, we can push it in from there, but I don't think we really have an incentive to do that. So I think we just hedge fund from here. That's fine. They just need to lock the top of the deck. But they know this is not an agenda, so they don't have to run this. Sometimes that's easy to miss, that ASIC group, the second free install, is not an agenda. It can't be. So M.I.C into Magnet to Hagen, again, they've produced only 1 breaker so far. And we still have a ganked at the end of the day. Ganked into M.I.C into Magnet to Hagen, not very good, but like Revolver is one of the nicest ways to deal with an on-sell. It's 2 credits, which is like pretty wild. So here with the Spin Doctor, we're just trying to draw an agenda. We'll do install, advance, advance. There's the Hyperbaric. Again, to deal with the M.I.C, it's pretty expensive. They have 17 credits though. So eventually they break this for 3 credits. That's still fine for us. If they run it here, like that means they did not realize that this was, okay, they're not running good. So Spin Doctor, we don't really have to pop it here unless we want to draw one of these. Oh, that's not an, that can't be an agenda. Yeah, they call it GG there, but yeah, it can't be an agenda. So if we want to risk Spin Doctor here, we can shuffle cards back. We don't really want any of these cards. We just want agendas, so we'll just mandatory. Well, that's good. Now, if we Spin Doctor here, we have a chance of drawing agendas into HQ, and that's bad. But if we draw ice, we have ice. All right, well, we have ice. So they need to deal with M.I.C into Magnet to Hagen. This will be 4 credits plus all the boosting. The Hagen they can't deal with. That's interesting. And then we can put these 2 on the table. So do we shuffle the Spin Doctor back in? I don't think we have a huge incentive to. We actually could trash that just so Drafter gives us, but we'll have another Spin Doctor on the table. It'll be whatever. This might not be the right line. I think having a clear deck is a bit better. We'll do Seamless Greasing. They're most on tempo. So we'll put a card in server 1. We should draw with this because we don't have enough ice. So we'll Tranquility to draw first. If we hit a Vovo, we're happy, but we just want a bigger piece of ice. So yeah, Spin Doctoring was bad there. Then we'll do new remote server. So at least if they get through here, we get Tucana, we get double ganked potentially, and then we have Rashida and Spin Doctor on the table. They still have to steal 7 points, obviously. But they think this is a Managarm. Like, that's a really big thing. It's like understanding that this could be an Anoetic or a Managarm. They're going to challenge here, and they actually have a chance of making it in. They have 1 click left, so I think we're going to send them into a tier and see what happens, because I think the bullets are going to be a bit close. But we can actually send them into not a double tier, because it depends how they use the ganked, but we will use the Tucana to get a tier here for sure. So they're going to charge a Hyperbaric. Okay, now they're only going to pay 3 for this. Still pretty good. The Magnet is not worth us rezzing that much. Actually, yeah, just making them spend any amount of money is fine. Actually, I know in the deck they have like cards they install at instant speed. Like, I'm pretty sure this deck has like a flux capacitor, so I'm not going to rez that. The Hagen, though, it's pretty good. They have to produce a Fractor. I think the Fractor in the deck is a Kurapira. Maybe we should have rezzed the Magnet. It's just 1 more credit with the Hyperbaric, which, like, whatever. There's a Kurapira. So now they still have to break for 3 credits. Now the order of axes is like kind of important. We could M.I.C them to lose a click, which like means that they could not steal an Ikoa here. But also importantly, do we M.I.C them? No, I don't think we do. This is where I think we feed them a tier, which is going to be sick. So this is what we do, right? So we do no further action. In theory, we have to res the gank. Sorry, forgot to res. Oh shit, I can't res the ganked. It doesn't matter. Sorry, I forgot to res. Oh, sick. It doesn't because it's an ambush. Okay, cool. So we don't have to res that ever. Unless we're playing around Hermes Bounds. So they steal the Luminal. So Dag gets to put a power counter on something. They get a charge ability. Yeah, ambushes have active text when face down. It's like the weird clause in Netrunner. All right, and now we can get a tier out. It's going to cost us, we don't have a, it's going to be expensive. Seems good though. We can trash some of these. They charge the Kurapira. So this thing cost them what? 3 to break? So we'll put it on server 1. We don't really need to get another Ganked there because we already have one. And if we gank them into this tier, it'll end the run. So we don't need to install another one. It does allow us to gain 2 more credits though, which is nice. So now they're going to be introduced to a tier. This is good fun. And that cost us, mind you, if we had a Vovo there, it's a bit cheaper. So we'll trash this Ganked to hit them into the tier. So it's 2 core damage. That doesn't really matter. Trash an installed runner card, gain 3 cards. That matters. Trashing a hyperbaric loaded is pretty good. In terms of breaking it, like they have to boost a lot. They don't have the money, so this is going to fire. So they're going to click through one of them. So we actually have an extra click on our turn, which we can't really capitalize on because the 1/3/2 is out. So we're going to do 2 core damage and end the run. So we hit a flip switch and the Beatrice. Yes, very cool. All right, we'll start with the Rashida. Mandatory. They couldn't trash the Tucana too because they access the gank first. In theory, if you want to deal with the Tucana, you want to access the gank last. Draw 3, gain 3. We have an agenda. Sick. So we just put another agenda on their remote server. Now this Hagen doesn't do anything. I don't think they can deal with this. So we'll go server 1. Trank for credits, I guess. Choose a non-agenda. We can't really install anything. We could put another ice in front of there. We don't have a huge incentive to. We could trash the magnet again. 1 credit actually might matter on this board state. The drafter is 2 credits. I think we don't need to. We could though. And then the question is whether we ice up R&D here. They can't really deal with the brand too easily, right? Like that's still pretty expensive and we have a ganked at the end of the day. So I don't think we have to. It's just, there's not much else we have to do. If we advance this once, right? Like they're not going to trash the seamless. We can consider putting this on R&D. It drops us down to 8 credits. This is a 3 credit res. Yeah, we can do it. We could consider playing around Beatrice, but we trashed one by icing up HQ. But as soon as they break this Hagen, like actually this Hagen is wrong because if they break this Hagen, they bypass the bronze. So this is more just like as a surprise. So it looks like we're going to have it here. They're just hoping we don't. But we do. Flip switch. Nice. And that would be 2 more ice on the table. Hey, good game. That's what we're trying to do. I feel like our matchups against the Anarch and Shaper are so much, there's less pressure they're putting off. So like getting the ice down is a lot simpler as opposed to criminals that want to run into everything. Thanks for the game. We didn't get a Vovo. We love Vovo. We rested a fair bit of ice. But here, you know, we can just keep doing our nonsense. So we get a magnet on server 1 and then we're actually running out of ice. And then we can get, I don't know, drafter and R&D. Cool. Yeah, Vovo would have gone far, but that's how you build your own Jinja. All right, let's play another one. All right, we're playing against an Arco. We have an off-world office, seamless magnet, real early. Can Ari deal with an early magnet? Maybe not. I think we're gonna keep this hand, just like dump everything in our remote server. This is actually one of their best openings. It's like off-world office, Tucana as wild as it is. We're gonna keep this. Arissana. I've been seeing a lot of Arissana at Worlds. I think there was one made the top cut. But she can struggle to deal with an early magnet, that's for sure. But we'll figure out, okay, well there it is. As much as like the blowout combo on turn 1 isn't amazing. So we're gonna do, we don't have a lot of money, that's the problem. So we're gonna do new remote. Actually, on 2 clicks, sorry. In theory, the least information we can give is new remote, ice, server 1 credit. Then we can score this out for 3 credits, 4/5 off the Tucana. Absolutely pop off. Something like that. Now, if we res this, we can score the off-world, and we can't res the Tucana. So we'll see what happens here. We're going to wait for priority on action. We can always just let the Tucana fire. If that's the case, if we let the Tucana off-world office fire, it'll be on 4 credits. We can get any ice from the deck as long as it costs 7 credits or less. And then we can get gank an Arco into it. If we had an on-cell loop, we'd have an on-cell loop. We're just going to fire this. It's a magnet. I think maybe it would have been safer to do Tucana Tranquility and then jam next turn because I like totally biffed the math here that if we have to res the magnet, we can't score out. So that was a bit of a mess, I think. Yeah, we probably would have been better getting Tranquility this turn for sure. Good econ start. Okay. So I think if that's the case, we can score this out and not get a Tucana. That seems less fun. But if that's the case, what's the difference next turn? To score out, we need 5 credits. So if we do an install here, we just do server 1, credit. We can score out the off-world office. We can Tucana onto this server, drop it into Tranquility. We might get a trigger here. Like, I think it's kind of hard for Arissana to deal with a magnet because you can't slap handle it. So you basically need like SMC and then you need to get into this remote server and it has to make sense. Like if your decoder is Unity, a lot of times it's Buzzsaw. So that's like a 6 credit plus 1 for break. Lily pad into SMC, nice. Okay, so it begins. I think we have enough money to do it again. We really goofed up the turn. But here we want to do, I think we just do Tucana off-world office. So we'll advance, go, score, off-world for 7, Tucana, we can get whatever we want. So I think we need something with 3 subroutines. That's the hardest for Arissana to deal with. Unfortunately, we can't res the Tranquility. There's no window here because in theory, the ice that we install with Tucana, we could like we could get that. Sorry, the ice we install here, we can Asa into the Tranquility, but there's no window here. So I think we're just going to put a drafter on R&D and hope that there's a chance that Arco's on Mimic. I think a lot of players were. So we'll do drafter on R&D. And that's enough. If she goes through drafter, we can feed a Ganked and then do the combo loop there. But I don't think a lot of times you let a drafter fire this early in the game. Well, maybe you do actually this early. You wouldn't do it later. Early, it's like we get a seamless. And also we didn't res the Tranquility, so there's some like respect that this could be a Managarm or an Anoetic. 1 and 3 here. Cubon, nice. Hit the off-world, hate it. That was bad. Definitely wanted to jam that next turn. So now the figure is like, can you get through drafter? How cheaply can you get through the drafter? With Mimic, it's now free. Here we just want to get any agenda into the remote server. Dirty Laundry, we're going back. Ganked. Uh-oh. They can trash that too. It's going to be all their money. 5 credits now. Dirty Laundry into the daily cast Hush off the top. So we love an agenda here. That was the thing that we were going to jam the remote server. It's actually pretty good. I think we res the Tranquility. Again, now you know it's not the Managarm. But this server is not super bulletproof. I think at the end of the day, if this gets... Oh, I did this wrong. Oops. 2 credits. Yeah, sorry. We biffed the Asa install. Sorry, that's Asa. Damn, we got pulled apart. I think we really misplayed the first turn where we should have just pulled in the Tranquility and then so we could have got to install the second turn because we were 2 credits away from like doing something really cool. But I'm worried how quickly a Narco can produce the Conduit and just go in on R&D. It's a bit harder with Ganked depending on the way to deal with Drafter. But she'll be on 6 credits. And this card we're going to be happy to score it no matter what. Here you're a bit worried, like if it's a face check into a Hagen, it can be kind of bad because then we threaten the SMC, you have to pop it. All right, so 6 credits, card on the remote server. No defensive upgrades. Could be anything though. Rashida. We've seen no Rashida so far. Yeah, the drafter is a liability, right? Like if a Mimic comes down, but I think it's only bad if it's like Mimic into something else. But that being said, like an Arco, she wants to run once a turn just to get the Lily Pad to fire the Arissana. 1 magnet res is pretty good. You have to be worried about the second magnet res. And if this is res, right? At least we get to eat this Cubon, which is nice. And we haven't seen an Urban Art Vernissage so far. It's been a while since I played Ari. Like we didn't see that much Ari at Worlds, but like I think the Ari decks are now obviously even more refined than they used to be, which is good fun. Takobi, nice. Gonna run HQ. It's a Trank Grid. Full information on hand. And there's a UAV, so that Cubon's gonna come back. Let's see what we got. That's nice. We can put that in the remote server. We don't have to really do anything with it. We can consider like putting that in. So we definitely score this out. We're on game point, which is like really scary. We also have a Tucana here. So I think like getting the magnet out is not very good because the Urban Art Vernissage will just like, you know, return it. So getting something on HQ is okay. I don't know what's the most taxing card. Like I think Hagen is actually relatively difficult to deal with. We get it for 2 credits on R&D. That's fine. Choose a card to install here. Nope. We can just put this in server 1. Gain 2. We can just click for 2 credits, I'm pretty sure. We could draw up here and then like whatever we top deck an agenda goes in the remote server, but like without seamless launches, it's a bit hard to get out of here. We're going to need to stabilize a bit on economy. So there you go. Daily cast. The first one finishes. 2 credits on Urban Art Vernissage. She is going to hit like real hard stride real soon. So we'll just see what the breaker solution is here. Like Hagen into Drafter, I think is 2 ice that are not like amazing to deal with. Multi-sub ice is pretty good. Hagen has like very good subroutines. The first subroutine is really, really important. And this remote server double magnet, it's like, you know, as soon as you get a buzzsaw down, it's a 2 credit server. So like we're bluffing more than anything else. Lily pad, you can run there to get the SMC down, but then you have to crack it. So just installing it is fine. And we know that there's going to be a run here. Yeah. Cause you just want to get the Cubon down. So we're going to lose our server. It's okay. We'll have a spin doctor. If she installs the Cubon, we can res the magnet to blanket. It'll drop us to 4 credits. As soon as she says nothing and we don't res, she passes the ice, so she can no longer install on it. And then she's on this magnet, which you can't cube on. So I think we're happy. We'd rather her do nothing here and then we don't res, and then she produces her breaker for this magnet. Because if she installs a cube on there, then we're actually incentivized to res it. It is a cube on. So now we probably want to res it to deny its value. It just kind of is rough, but like magnet is annoying against Arissana, but what can you do? So we will magnet it. It is blank. So now you're gonna have to produce a breaker to go through it. I'm assuming a buzzsaw is gonna be 7 credits to get through this, and you're not gonna get the coupon value. So you might just bounce here and then just let the coupon come back next turn. Let's see what her breaker is. It's unlikely for this to be the game. Yeah, there you go, buzzsaw. So actually that was cheaper because we had the UAV money. So this is not that bad. So this server entirely fell apart. We probably want to trash our magnets here. We'll res the spin doctor for sure. We don't really want to shuffle those back. We'd rather have the spin doctor on tap. Cool. We're most worried about the tranquility home grid, but you're more likely to want to deal with a Tucana there for sure. So we have the trank grid. That's nice. So ideally we get an ice that we actually trash this magnet because stopping the urban art vernissage bounce is super important. So we'll draw once. We'll draw again. We just want a piece of ice here. So the best we can do now is install a card. Like we can install the Vovo in server 1, draw off the tranquility, and get another ice. Oh, that's nothing. So here we can install another non-agenda card, so it can just be the spin doctor. It's not amazing. Forces only her to spend 2 credits though, so this is not great. We just want to get an ice there to trash this coupon so she can't return it, because that's 2 credits in a card draw every turn. Buy bands. What's in here? Spin doctor? Yeah. So 1 and 5. She trashes the spin doctor. We're okay with it. There's Echelon hitting the Vovo. So without another breaker, like Drafter is still kind of ugly at 5 credits. So you definitely want to, we're worried about one more breaker. We'll see if it is. Again, some decks are running Mimic. I kind of like the Mimic slot. It's only 1 influence and it's nice. Obviously we have Takobi here. So it's actually only gonna be 2 credits if you want to use Takobi counters. And we're now at the point where like she's pulled ahead that some of our taxing ice is like not gonna be that incredibly taxing. Unless of course we can get down like a ganked or something surprising. Where's the coupon going? There. Hedge fund. Cool. Hasn't seen Seamless yet. So credit. We're able to work with our mode server. We could have jammed in there. So it's the Ikawa, but we don't have what we need. So now the drafter is marked. So she can't deal with the Hagen yet. That's okay. So we have to figure out how to get out of here. We'll start with the spin doctor. Okay, we have a ganked. Ganked is only relevant really into the centuries. Tier is a bit expensive, not impossible, but a bit expensive. Doesn't get slap vandal, which is nice, and it's going to cost a pretty penny to get through that, as much as like we can't get anywhere near affording it. So I think we will, like, I don't think we have to overinstall this. If she drops a conduit, we have enough points in hand that we can be comfortable about it. So we want to force her to run. Okay, so what's our play here? These magnets are like trash. So we can trash both of them, get them the tier, and put tier ganked hedge fund. That's probably fine. I think that's what we do. So that will be install ganked, install tier, hedge fund. That's enough. So we'll get rid of these. We'll put back the Tucana, I think. The ganked in the bin is fine. The seamless coming back is good. So we'll do trash. We'll do server 1. So this looks like an agenda. Trank for 2. This goes on server 1. We'll do credit. Okay. Now she might run HQ and bounce one of these, but like there's huge pressure to figure out how to deal with the tier here, which is always really good fun. Again, we res tier for 9 credits after Vovo. We'll see if she pushes it. This looks like an M.I.C. M.I.C. is like kind of annoying, right? It's like 5 credits. That's something. Oh, sorry. Nothing to see there. Yeah, we should have waited for action. We don't have to res Vovo right away. Just a cool mug. Yeah, do it up. So Cleaver coming in off the SMC. That's even less credits. Lilypad draws a card. Any more? So this is ganked tier. This is really fun. You're clear. And even it's a tier. Res for 8 credits. Okay, so these are relevant subroutines. Trash one installed runner card. How much does it cost to break? Takobi increases strength by 3. So we come in at 6 strength. So it's 3, 4, up to 6 credits. And then the ganked actually fires, which is like pretty sick. So let's see what happens. So Cubon from hand. Okay. It's gonna be pretty cool. Now the deck has simul chips, so trashing programs doesn't matter that much. Actually, like trashing the lily pad is kind of fascinating. All right. So it's 6, return 2. Oops. Welcome back. It was a ganked. It's a tier again. Now, if she clicks through all of it, like we score the off-world office from hand, which is nice. And she also accessed that card before anything else. So like if this ends the run, so she did click through it. So that means that these are safe. So now we actually can score the off-world from hand because we're going to have a 5-click turn. So we can do install triple advance. That's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. We're one click short of Iqua, and we can't do Seamless because it's the turn that's installed, but we'll go for it. Tranquility. We don't really have anything else to install here. Gain 2. No Asa. Go. Vovo. He's fine. All right. It's a big tier. Hard to deal with. We want to just jam in there every turn. I wonder if it was actually right to jam into Iqua and just say whatever. Like, this obviously means any card we install, but there's a big chance that the Iqua is actually entirely safe there. If she clicks through it, like, that's the worst case. So, because then she can't steal the Iqua, actually. It might have been right just to push the Iqua in, like, very obvious hindsight there. We could just didn't install, advance, credit. Going R&D again. This is a credit. It's actually gains a credit. It's the drafter that's a bit, no, not that expensive. So at least we have the Iqua in hand. So this is time and credits that it's not exactly setting up. Drafter for 2. So this cost 3 credits for the whole server, making 2 back. So 1 credit for a run. So we just want another piece of ice here, right? Just any ice, really. I think M.I.C would be best case, as much as we can't really afford it. Building cheap Takobi, that was really, really important, because with enough Takobi, this is a 3 credit card. With one more Takobi run, this is 3 credits. Right? Like, there's some incentive just to farm the Hagen, because it's 1 credit to gain a credit and gain a Takobi counter. Yeah, she's doing it. So the tier is not going to last that long. Like, here you jack out. Yeah, very good. That's the line. Yeah, Takobi's wild. It's a, what's it called? It's a leech we can't purge. Simul chip as well. So that means thinking. So she needs to get through this again. Takobi means she can boost 6 strength, so that's 9 strength. So she breaks for 3. That puts her on 1 credit. She can always make a credit here. So we definitely need another ice. Let's draw once. I think forcing her into the Rashida is like pretty relevant. I think we need to force her into the tier at all costs. She might call her bluff here. So we'll get this into server 1. We'll gain 2 more credits. We can consider drawing here actually, just to get another ice. Yeah, that's really good. And then here we can get a spin doctor on the table. Move Vovo. Vovo is doing great. But now these unsells are actually going to attack up the Takobi. The problem is, again, like R&D is 1 credit for like 2 Takobi counters on an axis, let alone using Arissana's ability. So that's not good. But we need her to go through this and spend some resources. And then we maybe have a window for Iqua. I wonder if she's going to consider running this. Yeah, another Ganked is like very scary, potentially, because then like you do run out of Takobi counters. Pinhole. That's really good. I'm going to res the spin doctor and see how things go. Do we need to use the spin doctor here? I think we do. I'm going to get back. I don't think we're going to fire a drafter anytime soon, so I don't think we'll do Precious. We'll do spin doctor and one of those. So Rashida's going to go down. That's a really good check. If it's a gank too, we send her into the tier, but like that's not too bad. So Rashida, good hit. Arissana wasn't used, but no doubt she's going to go R&D here. And we do true, so we might see some pressure on HQ though, because we did unfiltered draw into an open HQ, which is a bit scary. We haven't seen a lot of influence in the deck. We've seen like what, Clot? No, not Clot, Hush. There's a DJ Fenris. I was wondering if that guy was going to show up. Again, making a good HQ run here is really nice. Cubone coming down. And the outer bonus, Lily Pad drawing a card. It has a click and 2 credits. She can steal. They can steal the Iqua. Sees the Trent Grid. It's going to be safe. But they're not farming the Takobi. Oh, already ran HQ. Yeah. I see. Yeah, they had to pinhole archives there because the Steve ability was already eaten on the first run. It's first. Yeah, first time a turn. That's unfortunate. There's not much we can put on HQ to tax her out. Like, if we put a drafter, trade 2 credits for a Takobi is like a totally fine trade. Yeah, pinhole archives. Okay, going in again. Takobi on 6 is pretty good. Just jacking out. Okay, the question is whether we have a window here. None of our ice is going to be that taxing. On sell is 3. This is 3. Hey, Nanako, 1 second. So I think we can consider like trying the Iqua. We have to do Iqua install advance. If we get the drafter, that's 2 credits, this is 3 credits. We could actually try that as well. I think we have enough money because this is going to be a 4 credit res. This is a 1 credit res. So that's 5 credits. The install is 2 credits. We're going to make the 2 credits back. It's close. I think if we force her to steal this though, like that's pretty good for us. Maybe she pivots to Conduit to close the game out. I think we're okay with that. So Tranquility gain 2. So we're at 10. So again, this will be 4 that drops us to 6. This is another 3 credits. So that drops us to 3. So that's like barely enough. The problem is like this is a 2 credit break for her. Her money's not amazing. I'm wondering if she can run HQ and actually get something of value. So again, I think we might be short on credits. Because again, this is, but was fine. This is 1 credit. This is 4. So that drops us to 4. No, that's enough. And like, they still have to access with the click and 2 credits. So this might be good enough. We haven't seen a Peach of Sean yet. Like that does help if you need to get the click and 2 credits left for the Ikua. It's gonna be close. And here, like you consider like Simulchip, just trashing your stuff, getting down SMC for a conduit and just trying to win off of R&D. Still have 2 MU. We've seen 2 SMCs. If you run HQ with Steve, like the most tempo you can get is like Dirty Laundry, Baya Bands, and then we have to choose which one of those we don't like. But like this is dodgy. I just think if she goes in here, we might have a window because this is a minimum of like 6 credits, and that's like kind of difficult. I think you need a Peach of Sean to start like making infinite credits or like, you know, free click credits. Again, our list doesn't run Managram or Anoetic, and like obviously you don't have to worry about that on the remote server, but that taxes out the pinholes in a much more interesting way. This is all just about the value of ice. And there's a lot of decks here that can deal with ice. So like getting a ganked in the remote server is like the cool thing we can do. I really do think we shouldn't score the off-world though. We should probably just push the Ikua before this got out of control. Yeah, what's the line here? There's only 9 points left in R&D. So it's not too many agendas, right? It's 4 agendas and 24 cards, 1 and 6. So we're not that worried about conduit drop. She has a bit more money to install stuff with Urban Arbor and Asajj. Obviously, she says Simulchip. We look at the bin. SMC is mostly it. Hush doesn't really matter. Hush turning off. No, there's no M.I.C. here. M.I.C. is like the other thing that you have to play around. Because M.I.C. is like relatively good. As much with Buzzsaw and Takobi, it's only 2 credits. Like losing a click is a relevant interaction with Ikua, which is what you expect to be in the remote server here. That being said, like we can pretend that this is an Ikua. We can pretend this is any 4-2. I don't remember if an Arco has seen the Seamless from hand. Okay, well, at least they get priority here while we figure this out. Okay, so they say none. So we res this for 3, or sorry, for 1 credit. They have to break it for 2. It gives them a Takobi counter. Now thinking, so now we have priority. Now, if we don't res it, they continue on and they hit the on-sell. The on-sell, they have to use, well, they largely have to use 2 Takobi counters. They're down to 4, they break it for 3. That means they can't break tier at all unless there's some magic here that we're not aware of. Now, if we do res this, they have to spend 2 right away. But if they put Cube on from hand, it's a free way to farm Takobis. I think we don't allow it to farm with the Takobi. That might be wrong, actually. This is not like super intuitive to me. All right, now the on-sell we res for 4 credits. Again, on-sell is pretty well positioned here to have 2 big sentries in a row. Because again, you have to, while you can click through this, that means the Ikua is entirely safe. And you can always click through a tier, but not your favorite thing to do. You can also let some of the tier subroutines fire for what it's worth. Surely you don't have the 3rd magnet installed. Yeah, this is not the 3rd magnet. We've seen 2 so far. Like we res both of them, trash them. They had a shelf life. They were like, okay. So they're going for it. Oh, Nana is here. Hello. So that's the Cubon. Okay, so now passing this is only 1 credit. Still kind of relevant. They still have priority if they want to use Simulchip. Hey, Nan. It's an on-sell for 4. Okay. So 3 subroutines. Do all the subroutines matter? Yeah, you don't want to let us install a ganked. That's obviously a problem. Okay, well. Sorry about that. So this is breaking for 3, you get 1 back. Trash 1 installed runner card. You don't want to give us that value. As much as we could, in theory, trash the echelon, and then you could reinstall it for free. So like that saves you credit if it like really comes down to it. Making sure they don't have 2 credits for the Ikua is like really important here. It seems like they might be 1 credit short, right? Because this is 3 credits. So I think like the line here is that you have to allow us to trash something. We're probably going to trash the echelon. That means you pay 2, gain 2, so you're on 3. No, hold on. That might not be it. Because like, you don't have to break the trash subroutine. Actually, you do, because we'll trash the Takobi. That's much more worrisome, yeah. Because trashing the Takobi is much more important. So you can't let us trash the Takobi. Install card from HQ Archives means the ganked can come back. That's like obviously also a problem. Hey, not at all. The runner cannot steal trash core cards. Obviously, that's also super important here. So I don't know if there's some line where you slap Vendel. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So you probably just have to break all the subroutines here. Because I don't think there's any way that you wanted the Takobi to get trashed, because then you just can't deal with the tier unless you click through it. And if you click through it, you get the Ikua. So like maybe there's some line where you don't lose, where you let the trash subroutine fire. You get through the on-sell. Hey, Nana. You click through most of the tier. You take the core damage, and then you can steal the Ikua. Hey, Nana, how's it going? Julie wants a dinner. Oh, be careful. Ah, you okay? As sure-footed as a cat can be. So we'll see here. This is pretty interesting. This is tricky. 3 clicks again. There's no good way to make instant speed money here for the rest of the run, right? Like you could, in theory, like simul chip for an SMC for a Cubon. That costs you 2 credits, I think, to gain 2 credits. You can't use the urban art for the SMC. You'd have to use it for the install cost, and it's free. I wonder if there's some line that you do like Peach Sean on top of this because you just need clicks left. But I think money is also tight. This is a hard angle. Like this clearly looks like the win, making sure you can get in. And this is like where the bluffing comes in, right? Like Anarcho's aware that this could not be, potentially isn't the Ikawa. Click, click. Spend to Kobe. Break 1 subroutine. This is sick. Gain 2 credits. Oh, this is the line. Oh, I like this line a lot. Because then they can let one of the subroutines fire on tier and they'll still get in with a click and 2 credits. Bananas in my lap now. This is a really good line. Because, yeah, well, wait, are we breaking? We can break 2 of the subroutines, let one of them fire, which will be the take 2 core damage. It doesn't matter. Yeah, this is cool. They figured it out. And that means next turn we might have a window to jam here. So it's 2 core damage, losing a simul chip and a Nuka. Yeah, they figured the line out. That was sick. Nicely done. Nice. And they're on game point. So like now slamming R&D works. That was really well executed. If we res the drafter, man, maybe resing the drafter, that was right. So now we like immediately need something in the remote server that wins. Yeah, if we res this for 1 credit, that actually might have been the difference. Oh, we'll look at the tape whether that actually fully mattered. But now we have to push out and win right now. The on-sell is probably going to keep the Cubon. Yeah, we definitely needed to res that. It came down to very narrow thinking. Okay, so we need an agenda in the remote server. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's only 4 agendas and 23 cards. Getting a Rashida might give us a moment to stabilize, but I doubt it. We can probably draw once. Would you imagine that? Would you imagine that? So we'll do server 1. We'll do Tranquility Gain 2. We'll get a Vovo in server 1. We're going to advance. So now if we lose off of R&D. Vovo will stay there. Now we'll learn to res the drafter. I'm pretty sure we res the drafter. That was good. But I did the math wrong, I'm pretty sure. Because we res this, we'd only cost us 1 credit, and then we'd have enough to be advance seamless. Yeah. That would have been interesting. And if the drafter fires, we actually gain 2 more credits because we probably install the gank on top of the Tranquility home grid. But this is it. This is the game. HQ wide open. You have to like, it's really awkward here because potentially you have to click for a credit because like to start any of your engine rolling, like you have to break the Hagen. So you have to generally spend 1 click at least for a credit here. We have 4 credits of installables. I'm not sure what installable can hit the table and just give you money like right now. Yeah, that was a really hard line to figure out, right? Core damage doesn't matter, right? That's the big thing with tier. The subroutines are good, but not all of them are relevant. So click for credit. Yeah, we're trying to win off of R&D here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 3 agendas and 22 cards. I don't know if we can pull a conduit here. So we just have to have R&D hold out. All right, we're going through. Getting our money back. Drafter for 2. You have to break this. Otherwise we get a ganked loop. Arguably, you don't have to break the first subroutine. You can just break the second subroutine. Oh, nice. We're making more money by using the simul chip to move the Cubon around. So, still breaking even. It's a ganked. Hold on. We'll trash it. So then we hit the drafter. Actually, we shouldn't trash it because, wait, sorry. I don't trash that. We definitely don't trash that because they can't trash it. And that means the top of R&D is safe. Like throwing her into the drafter, they break for free. Yeah, that's definitely not right. I got excited when I saw a gank, but there's no way that's correct. So they have to do the intricate like line here. So continue encounter, break, simul chip shuffle, continue encounter, continue movement, no action, hit a ganked. Yeah, we don't fire this for sure because they break it for free. Either they pay 1 on the Hagen and then we could threaten it to Kobe. That's interesting. But then we risk the top of the deck. So if I fire this, right, like they have to spend 1, they're down to 1 credit. Now on 2 credits, yeah, I think we keep this here. Like they can't trash it. Now here they can run HQ. They have only like, they have to run on the remote server right now, which they can't afford. So the top of R&D is totally safe. So we definitely don't fire. We could consider firing it to cost a credit because you have to break the Hagen being on 1 credit. But then like there's a chance you run R&D and win. So like we shouldn't clear the top of the deck. Running HQ here with 1 click left. Not sure what we're worried about. Dirty laundry or creative commission. You can have the creative commission. 1 click left. I don't think you can run the remote server here. Definitely can't. Going HQ. That's the 1 axis you have. You'll take it as a Rashida. trash that for 1 if you want, but that's going to be advance, seamless launch, get to 9, score. Good game. That was a wild game. Oh, that was super exciting. So that last agenda in the remote server, like it could have potentially not been the Ikwa. No matter what, I think we do install advanced to make it look like the Ikwa. But yeah, we'll just go from there. Yeah, if we res the drafter there, I think that run becomes difficult. I think they farm another like Takobi counter, but I think what's more important is just to have credits to break subroutines, not the strength. But like, yeah, Takobi dealt with that server really, really well. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the games. I know I sure did. It's a bit of a joke that if you give me a long enough period of time, I come to that sort of singularity point where I end up building a ganked combo deck. Yeah, it's a bit cursed, but I genuinely started out playing some sort of Tucana Asa to see what it looked like, and we were told about that sort of interaction with ganked, and eventually you have to convince yourself not to play Sice in time. But we're in a pretty okay spot here. I actually think in terms of like an HB tempo deck, there's a lot of things that I learned from this, understanding maybe the power of Vovo and greasing the palm just to be able to push the game into the remote server. The only thing still is how to deal with Criminal. That is pretty difficult because it's hard to slow down, but also, you know, force the remote server into things like Inside Job and Boomerang. So a bit more work has to be done on that front, but let me tell you, the Anarch and the Shaper matchups with like limited breakers and slow setups, you can get away with absolute murder. And it's quite fun. We of course are supported by Patreon, and these names here and all the Daily Cast patrons give me the support so that I'm able to take a day to record and edit together all this stuff. This stuff just wouldn't happen otherwise, and thank you so much for your support. It's really appreciated. And of course, huge thanks to all the Daily Cast patrons. On that note, we're gonna get back to some deck dives and some of the sort of video content you saw on this channel before, and it's pretty exciting to be back. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you later. Ciao.